In this video, I'm super excited to be checking out the Tamron 28-75 full frame lens. This video is sponsored by Skillshare, an online learning community. Now, this lens has been out for a couple of years now, and when it first came out, it was sold out for several months because everyone and their mother was out there recommending this thing. So it received a lot of praise, and it was essentially a cheaper 24-70 G Master for those who have full frame Sony cameras. In this video, I want to test this thing out on my A6100 and APS-C Sony mirrorless camera. So here is what the lens looks like. It is a compact lens for a full frame constant F2.8 aperture lens. The construction is made out of plastic, some rubber. The mount on the back is metal. Has electronic connections. This does support autofocus on all of Sony's line of mirrorless cameras. It comes with a plastic lens hood that is removable. Here is the front lens element. Looks pretty flat to me. It's not overly large, not overly small. Is not all that much longer than the new 16-55 from Sony, so it's about a little bit less than an inch longer. So the zoom ring is on the front or at the top of the lens, and then the focus ring, electronic focus, is towards the back. It has nice and clean markings up here for the focal length, Tamron branding, and then 28-75 F2.8 Di3 RXD. So no markings on the front, nice and clean looking, and I have to say it feels pretty good. It doesn't feel as premium as the Sony 16-55, but it doesn't feel overly cheap. It is pretty heavy. It's just over a pound of weight. The one thing that is a little weird is you do see a seam here in the plastic. Putting this on the A6100, you could see that the lens actually complements the camera body pretty nice because it has kind of the same flat, semi-matted black, semi-gloss color scheme. It doesn't look too out of place. Like I said, it is pretty heavy for an APS-C lens, but it's not heavy at all for a full frame 28-75. The reason I've never actually seriously considered this lens for my Sony APS-C cameras really is because I've always known that it's a good lens, at least it was very well reviewed, but it's simply not wide enough as an everyday walk-around lens. 28mm to me is more of a street lens. I'm not going to be able to use something like this for interior photography, for real estate photography. With the addition of Sony's new 16-55 f2.8 lens for Sony APS-C, I thought it would be interesting to pick up one of these Tamron lenses and possibly do a comparison in the near future. Ultimately, they are both walk-around lenses that are constant f2.8, and they are both in kind of the same price point. This lens was about $900, and now you can pick it up for a little bit less than that, whereas the Sony lens is still $1,200. My first impressions of this lens are honestly very positive. I wasn't expecting very much from it because personally I've always preferred Sigma as my third-party lens of choice, but Tamron seems to be doing a really good job, at least from what I'm seeing with this lens. So it's built very well, very smooth when it comes to racking the zoom in and out, focus ring. The autofocus on this lens is better than I expected. So before I show you some of the sample photos I was able to get with this lens and the A6100, I wanted to talk about today's video sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community that offers membership with meaning. Skillshare offers classes for those who live in the real world, which means you don't have to put your life on hold just to progress your creative journey. You can continue to learn and grow with short classes that fit your busy schedule. You can explore classes in illustration, design, photography, videography, freelancing, and more. I recently discovered a class on street photography called Unlock the Secrets of Composition, Color, and Confidence, led by Craig Whitehead. You can learn a lot from fellow photographers. I honestly never really thought about textures nor the lack of light as a benefit, so talking about night photography in the street photography realm. Definitely learning points that I plan on incorporating into my future sample photos. Skillshare is also incredibly affordable, especially when compared to in-person classes or workshops. With the annual subscription, you're looking at less than $10 per month. The first 500 of you who click on the link down below in the description will get 2 months of premium membership absolutely free. So definitely check out the link down below to learn more and to grow your creativity. So now let's take a look at some sample photos and maybe one video using this lens on my A6100. All of these shots are done handheld, no post-processing, no editing, no filters, no crazy business, straight out of the camera, JPEGs. Here we go. So that is it for the sample photos, and I have to say I am thoroughly impressed with the performance of this lens, and that maybe is because I don't have too much experience with Tamron lenses that I didn't know what to expect really, but this lens performs really well. The one thing that I can tell you right off the bat is the autofocus is very impressive, especially with this new line of cameras, the A61, A64, and A66. This lens performs remarkably well. The only small issue that I came across was sometimes at 28 millimeters, it would hunt for a little bit in kind of low light situations. So not all the time, but when your subject is kind of against a darker background and it's not super easy to find focus, it struggled a little bit, but it was not by any means a deal breaker. In the majority of my shots, 90% of the time, 95% of the time, focus was very quick, very accurate, and silent. And that's one of the nice things about this lens is if you're planning on using it for video, it does a really, really good job because the focus motors on this thing are, you can't hear them, honestly. They're very, very quiet. So even if you're using onboard audio, nothing to worry about. The image quality, the colors are amazing, especially paired with, again, this newer line of APS-C cameras. From a sharpness standpoint, this lens I found was very sharp, wide open at f2.8 at every single focal length. Even in the corners, I took a couple of images and I just zoomed in just for fun to see what they look like, and this lens performs very nicely. Now, to test out sharpness, I am planning on doing a more in-depth comparison between this Tamron lens and the new Sony 16-55, but just for fun, I snapped a couple of quick photos. I was surprised to see this Tamron lens kept up quite nicely to the sharpness from the 16-55. In the corners, it was a very close race. This shot taken at f2.8, very similar performance from the two lenses. And this shot here at f8 is almost indistinguishable. It looks like you could have taken either shot with either lens. Colors are excellent with this thing. The bokeh is nice and creamy, especially at f2.8. There were no issues where it would lock up or anything would happen to where the interface between the lens and the camera was not functioning correctly. Initially, when this Tamron lens was released, there were a lot of people complaining about it just glitching out and it would stop working all of a sudden on their full frame Sonys. Tamron has fixed those issues with firmware updates, and my copy that I purchased new has no problems whatsoever. One thing about this lens that you should be aware of, and it's a nice feature of it, is the minimum focusing distance is very short. So you can get really nice and close to your subject. Most lenses, they'll print the minimum focusing distance on the front of the lens. It's not printed here, but you can get very close to your subject and get some pretty unique shots with this combo right here, especially on the telephoto side at 75 millimeters. And that brings me to the only real flaw that I have with this lens, especially using it on a crop sensor APS-C mirrorless camera, and that is it's simply not wide enough. If this was a 20-70 or a 20-60, it would be a usable replacement for the kit lens, and I would highly recommend it. It would be easy. But at 28 millimeters, you're not really getting that wide field of view, especially when you multiply that by a 1.5 times crop. This is not an indoor lens. You're gonna have to really back up against a wall to get your subjects in the frame if you're using this indoors. But outside, for portraits, for street photography, definitely very usable. And that is ultimately the compromise that you have to decide to make with this lens. The Sony 16-55 does everything well because the focal length works for APS-C. 28-75 just doesn't work as nicely on the wide end. Now, Tamron does have a wide angle kind of version of this lens, the constant F2.8. There are 3 lenses in the series, and they have like a 17-27 or 17-28, something like that. So that is going to be it for my review of this lens. I know a lot of you down in the comments, because you've commented about this lens in my other videos, a lot of you have this lens and love it. So comment down below if you've ever tried it or used it or have it. Let me know what you guys think about it. If you guys are interested in checking out pricing and reading more specs about this lens, as usual, I will post a link down below to Amazon and B&H, so definitely check that out. Thanks for all of your likes, comments, and support. Stay tuned for more, especially if you want to see this thing go head-to-head with the 16-55, which is coming up in my next video, which is about a week from now. So thank you guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.